Orale, bienvenidos and welcome to the Familia FFB podcast. This is your host Jorge Martin, and it's the Windy City. The winds is blowing, but hey, you know what? This is always one of my most proud Theo moments. She never gets. I hope she never gets tired of me saying this, but no. Carmen Vitali is one of our repeat guests. I think this may be her 5th time on the Familia FFB podcast. So I think she and Vinny Bonsignor might have the record for the most times appearing on this podcast. So you know her on Fox Sports, you know her as at Carmi V on Twitter, Instagram, on the socials. You know, I know her from way back when. I'm not gonna talk about the fact that she used to for the Dodgers, but she, you know, before she was famous, she was working for us. But no, I'm so proud to see her come in. Carmen, welcome back.
Thank you so much. I'm always like, I'm so just, I don't know what to do with my hands every time I come on and you introduce me. But it is, we have such a wonderful, rich history of working together, and I'm so excited to be back here again. I didn't know it was that many times. Oh my God, that's awesome. But yeah, I mean,
and you're the only one.
A long way.
You're the only one 2 teams that we've done 2 teams with. So
oh yeah, okay. Yeah, well, that's the benefit
Bears.
of covering an entire division.
Oh, but I mean, this is awesome. I mean, things are so electric in Chicago right now since Caleb Williams came on. You know, you've got can you describe to me, just from your friends and family back in Chicago, what that level of excitement is for this kid who so many people are calling generational talent, but we don't want to put that much of a burden on him here.
I know. And for that reason, I feel like I've been the wet blanket for everybody, including, on Chicago media as well, because I don't want to put the weight on this kid's shoulders. I don't want to put the weight on Caleb Williams' shoulders of the world. I don't want to put the generational label on him. I think that word is overused. The last guy I think I'm comfortable saying that about that came out was probably Andrew Luck. I don't think that that's something that we should be assigning to these guys before they ever play a down of NFL football. But that being said, I've had to kind of temper the expectations of so many of my friends and family, because the hype is it's always pretty high this time of year in Chicago. That's just the natural cycle of being a Bears fan. The optimism is at an all-time high right before the season. But there's really good reason for it this year. And that, I think, is, it gives some credence to how excited everybody is. And it makes it so you feel a little bit better because of the fact that this whole roster was curated by Ryan Poles for the last 3 years since he got there. The Bears have been patient with Ryan Poles. They have absolutely taken the slow and steady approach. Ryan Poles is trying to build for sustained success, not just trying to catch lightning in a bottle, which I think so many regimes beforehand were trying to do at various points in their tenure. So now you have this wonderful landing spot for this brand new quarterback. I think this is the best situation a quarterback taken first overall has ever come into, given the fact that the Bears didn't warrant the first overall pick. This was the Carolina Panthers pick. Not to mention their defense came on at the end of last year. And then Ryan Poles was not shy about adding to the arsenal of offensive weapons that is so exciting, I think, for fantasy owners now, because you got DJ Moore last year. This past offseason, you go and get Keenan Allen. And then they luck into Odunze at number 9 with their second first-round pick this year. I mean, this is just an embarrassment of riches for any quarterback. And now Caleb Williams is going to be expected, obviously, to be the starter. That's who he is. Addy Reflus has already said that. But he also doesn't have to be a world beater, and he doesn't have as much of an uphill battle when you look at all of the talent that he's surrounded with. So that's really exciting stuff. And for once, I think in my lifetime, we could see some very, very flashy offensive football from the Chicago Bears. This is the defense town. This is why I'm such a defensive girl, because I never had offenses to watch when I was growing up in Chicago. So this is going to be really, really exciting. I think either way, it's either going to crash and burn spectacularly, or it's going to work out. And I hope it's the latter. I really do.
I hope so too. I hope so too. Because really, you think if you think of the Bears, I mean, Butkus, Singletary. I mean, from an offensive standpoint, it's Gale Sayers and Walter Payton. The running backs. I mean, you don't. I mean, there's Jim McMahon, but he was he was more the guy in the middle, kind of keeping everything together on that.
He was the facilitator.
Yeah.
He was the facilitator. That was fun.
What, from what you've seen, and there are some times where what I saw Caleb Williams do, it almost felt like it was impossible. Sometimes where he like spins out of a tackle, a would-be sack, looks up and he throws a 40-yard bomb, hits Brandon Rice in the numbers, and that's hard to replicate in the NFL.
Yes.
But when coming in, it's Shane Walder calling the plays. What can he do? What kind of offensive environment are we talking about for the Bears to come into with those three great receivers?
I think what you've seen from Shane Walder, and he comes in with a track record, first of all. He's been a coordinator for a number of seasons. He's also gotten the most out of his quarterbacks, no matter who that's been, from Russell Wilson to Jared Goff to Geno Smith. He's responsible for Geno Smith's resurgence. And that's not nothing. And it also, I think you should be encouraged by the fact that all of these guys are different kinds of quarterbacks. You have Jared Goff, who is just that pure passer and kind of the statue in the pocket. And then you have Geno Smith, who's a little bit more mobile, but still a downfield passer as well. I think that what you're going to see is that Shane Waldron is going to allow Caleb Williams to be Caleb Williams. And he is going to have a ton of options at his disposal at any time. But he's also going to have the freedom to improvise like he did so well in college. It is harder to replicate that in the NFL, but it's also what sets really great quarterbacks apart from others now in the league, because there's just no way to defend a quarterback that can keep his eyes up while he's scrambling. I think that is the most the biggest thing about Caleb Williams that encourages me is where you look at a guy like Jaden Daniels, where if you watch him at LSU, he did a lot of the same scrambling, mostly out of necessity, but it was but he didn't necessarily keep his eyes up. He wasn't looking for extra throwing lanes. He wasn't looking for extra time. He was just trying to buy himself time to run. And that's not the case with Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams will run around the backfield all while keeping his eyes up and looking for guys downfield. And that's why he's drawn those comparisons to guys like Patrick Mahomes. I am not saying Caleb Williams is Patrick Mahomes, but he does have that same ability where he is looking for other throwing lanes while he is scrambling. And to be able to have that awareness, if he can translate that to the NFL, he is going to be so hard to defend. And if he gets on the same page with his receivers, especially with guys like Rome Odunze, who's going to be there for the long haul no matter what, given that he's a first-round draft pick for the Chicago Bears. I mean, that could really be the duo of the future in Chicago and for a really long time at that. It's a very exciting prospect. It's very exciting and very easy to be optimistic about Caleb Williams and the guys that he has available to him.
So we talked about the three guys that he's got. DJ Moore, who went over 1,300 yards last year. Keenan Allen, who had 150 targets in 13 games with Justin Herbert. And Rome Odunze, who I love Marvin Harrison Jr. There was they're different players. I don't know if it's just because I saw him more, but I love Rome Odunze's game, and I think this can be. Can you give me an idea on the pecking order between the three of them to help our Familia community, our fantasy, future fantasy drafters, how it's going to run?
Yeah, from a fantasy perspective, it's kind of hard, I think, to really figure out where these targets are going to go. But I do think that if DJ Moore is still first in this pecking order, I think he's your first go up and get him, especially because DJ Moore has proven that he can be successful no matter who the quarterback is. I mean, he did that all of it in his Carolina days. He had multiple 1,000-yard seasons in Carolina with a complete rotating cast under center. So he has proven that he can be productive no matter who's throwing him the ball. And that's going to come in handy when Caleb is getting acclimated to the league, especially early on in the season. I don't think that means, though, that DJ Moore is going to be worse for wear or starved for targets or anything like that. He's also a guy that can bail you out of a lot of situations. We saw that with Justin Fields, where DJ Moore's catch radius is so much bigger than his size. He just catches anything, and you can really give him those 50-50 balls, despite the fact that he's not the biggest receiver in the entire world, which is a testament to who he is as a player. So he's first and foremost. I definitely see, Keenan Allen being involved, and I don't know that he's older, and I don't know that he's going to be in Chicago for the long haul. So I don't know how much they're going to invest in trying to get him involved. I think he's there as a safety blanket. I think he's there as a guy that you can depend on because he has so much experience in this league. He still is wildly productive, as we saw in LA last year, but I do think that as soon as you can kind of figure out Odunze, and as soon as you can see, you want to develop that relationship between Odunze and Caleb Williams as soon as possible. So I think that Keenan Allen is there as a safety blanket, but I would not be surprised to see Odunze catch him or surpass him as the number 2 receiver pretty quickly.
Yeah, that is interesting because, a lot of times with rookie receivers, if they're going to hit, I mean, obviously like Justin Jefferson, it was like his second or third game where he had a blow up game, but a lot of times it's that second half of the season, like Amon-Ra St. Brown, where, like week 10 forward or something like that. And that's why that, as you're talking about that, I mean, Keenan Allen is such a pristine route runner, and and one of the best route runners out there. And I mean, we've seen so many times in sports, there's that older dog who's kind of like passing it on to the young buck and teaching them the ways. I think this is going to be fascinating, and the way they're going, DJ Moore is going very early in drafts. Keenan Allen's in the middle, probably about the 5th round, and then Odunze is maybe 1 or 2 rounds behind him. But no, this is going to be fascinating. I mean, with Caleb at the controls, this is the one thing that I'm trying to temper, and I think you're trying to do the same thing. I can't tell you how many times I've heard since he got drafted that the Bears have never had a 4,000-yard passer. And it's just like, and people are already predicting that. I'm like, is it a failure if he throws for 3,825 touchdowns? No, I don't think so.
No, because his predecessor didn't sniff those numbers. So it's one of those things where, and I get it, Justin Fields made up for a lot of that with his running ability. But at the end of the day, when you have these receiving weapons, you need to get them involved. And in order to do that, you're going to have a lot of targets. You're going to have to push the ball downfield. We've seen Shane Waldron be able to do that. But at the same time, Shane Waldron really likes mixing in the run game. And the run game is something that I think is going a little bit under talked about because it's being overshadowed by these offensive weapons in the receiving room. But you have DeAndre Swift now in that running back room. You have Khalil Herbert. You have Roschon Johnson, who the team took last year's draft. So it's kind of a running back by committee, which isn't great, I think, for fantasy purposes. We've talked about this before because this has been the Bears' kind of MO. But at this stage of the game, I do think that DeAndre Swift is going to be a factor in the passing game as well, or in the receiving game rather, and be that kind of check down guy that they were hoping Khalil Herbert was going to be last year. I think that there's a lot of room to play around with DeAndre Swift as far as what Shane Waldron can do and what he's proven that he likes to do with his running backs and having multiple backs that he can lean on and rotate in and out for different downs. It should be a very well-rounded offense. Just the run scheme in general, that mid-zone run scheme that Shane Waldron likes to deploy really is offensive lineman friendly. And so I think that's going to open up a lot more running lanes, let them be a little bit more diverse and multiple when it comes to their run game. And that's going to just lead to a pretty balanced offense that's going to be, at the end of the day, hopefully unpredictable. And that's kind of the name of the game with Shane Waldron. So it's going to be very interesting to see where Caleb leans first, if he wants to lean into that run game because he's still getting his, he's wading into the professional waters, or if, he has built up enough of a rapport with his receivers where he's working out with them, in the off season, had a full, OTAs with them and all that kind of stuff, and just decides to start slinging it right away. We're going to see.
No, but as far as kind of like how the touches are going to go, should we follow the money that DeAndre Swift is going to be the touch leader and out of the backfield?
I think especially because he will probably be involved in the receiving game too. Right. I think he is probably a really great pickup. I wouldn't take him early necessarily. I think there are other running backs out there that are going to do more. But I also think that DeAndre Swift is going to be your lead back. You didn't pay him that amount of money for nothing. So I think a lot of people thought that the Bears overpaid DeAndre Swift, but if he ends up being a focal point of this offense, then that's going to be worth every penny.
No, that's I mean, yeah, getting a balanced offense, especially with the way the defense played. And I mean, we'll talk about the line because I can never get enough of hearing you talking about offensive line plays. So I think I added offensive line play into the NFL Insider series because it gives me a reason to ask you about it. But before we get there, Cole Kmet, was one of the primary options after in the passing game after DJ Moore last year, but now he's got those two receivers. How much it's his targets are like figuring to go down significantly?
I actually don't know because Shane Waldron does love using tight ends. He runs multiple tight end sets at one of the highest clips in the league. He did that in Seattle for multiple years. He does a lot of fun things, like in the way that Kyle Shanahan uses his multiple running backs. Shane Waldron uses multiple tight ends, and it creates so many mismatches for the defense when you present them with a multiple tight end look. If you put two tight ends out there, especially if they are guys that can be receivers, but also are good in the blocking game and can be extensions of the offensive line, then you really have no idea what these guys are on the field to do. And that is all in a means of creating confusion and getting the best matchups between the offense and the defense. That Shane Waldron loves to play around with and loves to try to stay 2 steps ahead of people, and he uses tight ends to do that. So I don't necessarily know that you have Gerald Everett there now as well, and he was with Shane Waldron in Seattle, but I don't think that's going to take away from Cole Kmet's targets. And I think that Cole Kmet is going to again be someone that Caleb leans on. The Bears just renewed his contract and gave him a new contract I believe during the season last year. And signed him to that extension. So you know that he is here for the long haul. He's a hometown kid. He's a great story. Everybody in Chicago loves him. I fully expect him to be very involved in this offense. And again, trying to be that safety blanket for Caleb Williams.
Love it. Well, okay, I'm going to give you the floor. Offensive line. I mean, this was a very good run blocking line, if I remember correctly, from seeing some of the grades. Kind of how does it stack up, and how important is it going to be for Caleb Williams, who was running for his life so much last year at USC?
If you'll allow me a little bit of an indulgence to plug something that I have up on foxsports.com right now, it's actually all about the offensive line because I actually this summer got to go to Arizona and train with Tevin Jenkins. He's working with AQ Shipley, who was a 12-year vet in the league, played center for the Arizona Cardinals, and then for the Buccaneers, which is where I met him, and then he was a coach even for the Buccaneers. He is now training offensive linemen, and he does the In the Trenches segment on Pat McAfee. I can't say enough about AQ. But Tevin Jenkins was training with him in Arizona, so I invited myself to their training sessions. Shout outs to both of them for letting me do that. I pretend I was an offensive lineman for a couple of days. And through those conversations, though, I mean, Tevin Jenkins told me how much more intuitive this scheme is this year under Shane Waldron. They did retain their offensive line coach, Chris Morgan, so the offensive line really has a lot of continuity. We don't know exactly who's going to be the center yet. It's either going to be Coleman Shelton or Ryan Bates. Both are veterans. They're just new to Chicago. They both played a lot of football. And they are going to add some experience for Caleb Williams from that center position. But then the rest of the guys have played together. They're going to be in the same spots they were last year. And also what I love about this mid-zone scheme that Shane Waldron runs is, again, it thrives off double teams. It doesn't leave these guys on an island. Very rarely are you going, you're going to see one-on-one offensive lineman, defensive lineman across the way and just be expected to hold your position and not have any help. This scheme actively seeks out double teams. That's great. It's offensive lineman friendly. At the same time, it requires a lot of coordination. It requires a lot of chemistry among these guys because they all need to not only know their job, but they need to know everybody else's job on the line. I mean, offensive line play is defined by 5 guys playing as one. And that is especially true in this scheme. So it's going to be about how well these guys can mesh and the fact that they are also trying to take stuff off of Caleb Williams' plate. Tevin Jenkins told me that they want to be the ones to make the checks and IDs, take that off of Caleb Williams' plate. So, pointing out how many down linemen there are, where the mic point is, if they recognize a blitz coming in. they are trying to be so communicative and do that for Caleb so he doesn't have to do it. And therefore he can, get to he's going to have to know what to do with it once they identify it, but it can make that process that much quicker and that much easier for a young guy. And the offensive line is taking so much responsibility for that and so much responsibility for the success of this offense this year. You absolutely love to see it because they really are the anchor for the offense and what makes this offense go. So they were good. I love that you alluded to the fact that they were good in the run blocking last year, because they were. They were a top 10, top 12 unit as far as run blocking went last year, which I think went way under people's radar because the pass pro was so bad. But the pass pro, it was a combination of injuries. So there was a lot of shuffling along the offensive line. And then you had a quarterback that held the ball the longest of anybody in the league. Right. I mean, Justin Fields had the longest time to throw of anybody, and it wasn't close. So when you have a guy that holds on to the ball as he's trying to get through his progressions, I mean, defenses are too sophisticated for that these days. Offensive lines cannot be expected to hold their pocket for more than 2, 3, 4 seconds. And it's a lot. It's a blink of an eye. I get it, but that's just kind of how the game is played these days. So I expect with the double teams and with the amount of check down options that Shane Waldron should have and the amount of window dressing that goes into all the motion that he deploys and stuff like that, that should all help the line. And I expect really good things out of the line this year. I mean, I fully expect them to shed if only we had an offensive line in Chicago and we'd be so much better. I expect them to shed that narrative, and they expect to do it too.
Fantastic. Well, the defense really shed a narrative because they were getting trampled in the first half, especially on the ground, and then turned it around. And it was interesting where it was like, I'm looking at kind of like what they were doing there at the second half, just from a numbers standpoint. And I was just like, wow. How much of that team, that the entire unit is returning, and how much are they building from both against the run and the pass looking into this season?
Yeah, you really saw everything click when Montez Sweat got there at the trade deadline. Yeah. I mean, that just seemed to be the missing piece that clicked everything into place. Then you finally got some pressure up front by Montez. I mean, he finished, I believe, 8th in the league in sacks last year, 12.5 sacks. Between Washington and Chicago, but still led the Bears in sacks despite only being there for a half of the season. So that was good to see some pressure up front. I still do think that the Bears are leaning pretty heavily on guys like Javon Dexter to come along in their second year and be that 3-tech that makes Matt Eberflus's defense go. I'm a little worried about the defensive interior when it comes to this team if you're looking for weaknesses. But at the same time, they've shored up a lot of their secondary. They gave the new contract to Jalen Johnson, made sure that, he's their lockdown corner. And I think in both regards to the run and the pass, we've seen the Bears generate takeaways at the back half of last season, especially in the pass against the pass. I think they led the league the last 8 to 10 games of last year. They led the league in interceptions. You had multiple guys, I think 4 different guys had 4 interceptions for the Bears. And that is, again, what Matt Eberflus's defenses try to do. That is what he stresses. He stresses takeaways because he realizes that it has a domino effect. It gives the offense extra possessions. It gets the defense off the field. It allows them to stay rested and stuff so that if they are needed later on in games that they're still fresh. I really, really love what this defense can be. And I think that it will continue the momentum they started with the back half of last year. Like I said, they added in the right areas. I'm still a little bit worried about that interior defensive line rotation. But other than that, I mean, they've got the linebackers. Like I said, they filled out the secondary. I guess it could be a little deeper on outside corner, but I think it's enough to, again, be one of the best defenses in the league this year. And that's something Chicago knows very well. And Chicago knows defense, and they expect to have defense, whether or not they have an offense. So that should happen again this year.
Yeah, the only tough part is maybe Caleb Williams won't have to be in any shootouts like he was at USC, the 45 to 42 games where, it might be some, 21, 17, 24, 27, 24, 21 games kind of like that. They won't need him to do so much because that defense is good. So that'd be fun. So, you kind of teed something up before we talked about this division really could be, everybody could be, good to very good.
Right.
You got Jordan Love and those receivers in Green Bay. You got the almost NFC champion if you would have stopped the game at halftime, and the Detroit Lions, and now the Minnesota Vikings have Justin Jefferson to help bring along potential either Sam Darnold or rookie court and JJ McCarthy. How much is this just kind of like, man, just a classic AFC North, just battles that are going to happen?
Yeah, I'm actually really excited because it is. This is kind of a return to the black and blue division that I grew up with. I love the Lions, the Detroit Lions. I think they have all the intangibles on top of the talent. They also have guys locked up their budding young superstars are locked in under team control through 2026, 2027. When you talk about guys like Aiden Hutchinson, Sam Laporta, Jahmyr Gibbs, Brian Branch, all these rookies that had rookies and second year players, and in the case of Aiden Hutchinson, third, but you have these guys that are immediately impactful. And that's all you can ask for out of your draft classes. And then on top of that, they are paying their dudes that, they lean on, like Jared Goff, like Amon-Ra St. Brown, like Penei Sewell. They're valuing the players that they do have, which in turn helps with the chemistry in the locker room, because this organization walks the walk in every sense of the word. Being around Dan Campbell, Brad Holmes, being in this locker room as I've gotten to be, it's such a joy. It's seriously one of the best locker rooms that I've gotten to see and be a part of, even in losses. I was there for the NFC Championship game when they lost, and everyone was so mad. Everyone was so angry because they were that close to the Super Bowl, and just to see it ripped away. And so I do think while they're not necessarily going to be the underdogs this year, they still have every bit the motivation that they had last year, because they were so close, and they know that they're so close. They were literally one half of football away from the Super Bowl. And you saw what Detroit, does when these guys get to the playoffs. Ford Field, I had the benefit of being there for the Buccaneers game. It was just an absolute madhouse. And having the dome, it gets so loud, and there's everybody's so into it. And it's such a heartwarming story. And when you're talking about the elite teams, again, the intangibles mean as much as the tangibles do. So there's that. And then you have the Packers, though, pushing like right there. They surpassed all expectations, but I don't think there was a question that the Packers were going to return to form under Jordan Love. Pretty much from the midway point of last season, you kind of realized, all right, I spent a lot of time talking to guys. Yes. I spent a lot of time talking to coaches and stuff that had coached against him even early on in the year, just asking about what they saw out of him. And every single person I talked to was like, whatever it is, he has it. And even when there were bumps in the road, and he wasn't looking as great as he was towards the back half of last season, but you can just see the development. You can see the recognition when he's looking at the field and when he's looking at the defense. And then to have such a young core to grow up with. These guys are building for, again, years and years and years to come. You have just the sheer amount of options that Jordan Love has in good receivers. I'm not going to say any of them are great yet, but he has so many good receivers to choose from. And we saw it in the game against Dallas, where you just don't know who to defend at that point. And then because they were just paralyzed by that, Green Bay could run it down the Cowboys' throat all game. It was just, it was a masterclass in how to, just basically trot out more weapons than anybody can defend. And that's going to make Green Bay so hard to play. And that's what's going to make them so good. And the fact that they're doing it this quickly, I'm very interested to see who ends up on top of this division, whether it's Green Bay, whether it's Detroit, and then how close the Bears get to that level, and then how close even the Vikings are going to be. We talked about it a little bit before, but I just don't think the Vikings are going to be that bad because they have so much talent on the roster that you don't need a world beater at quarterback to make this offense go. And then what that defense has the capability to be under Brian Flores, especially with now you have Jonathan Grenard and Dallas Turner opposite each other for the pass rush. Like Brian Flores is already one of the most creative guys when it comes to blitzing. We know he loves to blitz. I mean, he blitzed more than anybody in the league, even Todd Bowles last year. And again, wasn't close. But if that defense is a top 2, top 3 unit, which I think it could be, and then you have guys like Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, hopefully he's back healthy. And now you have Aaron Jones in the backfield for the Vikings, which is going to be weird. You don't need to be a crazy good quarterback. You just need to manage the game and get the ball to your weapons, at which you have plenty. So I'm not predicting like playoffs or anything for the Vikings because I do think they're going to still have to figure out a lot when it comes to under center and JJ McCarthy eventually. But I don't think they're going to be that bad. I don't think it's out of the question that the Vikings win 7-8 games this year.
I'm not either. No, I still think for the first, I mean, everybody's talking about so much about, JJ McCarthy's getting great coaching and this and that. And I'm like, well, Sam Darnold's getting that possibly for the first time in his career. And
it's true.
And I remember when he came out of USC, he was pretty good. That was the reason he was number 3 pick in the draft. But no, it's gonna be fun. You're gonna have a blast this year. I'm gonna have a blast following all your work on Fox Sports. I mean, all the different outlets that you're on. I'm just I try and tune in whenever, especially when you're on the Fox Sports NFL podcast. I'm like, okay, if I see your name on the little thing, I'm tuning in. So love it. So I gotta ask you.
Okay.
So, closing out with some Mexican food talk. Okay. You're back in kind of the homeland of Mexican food. Can you compare LA to Chicago tacos? They're like favorite tacos from either one?
Oh, okay. So it's interesting. I honestly think that Chicago goes really underrated for their Mexican food. Because it's not as close to Mexico, obviously, as California is, but Chicago Mexican food is so good. And there are so many different neighborhoods where you can just walk in for some authentic, either if it's tacos or burritos, whatever it is, it's so good. And I really would put Chicago's Mexican food up against California's. I do think California's tastes a little bit fresher, whereas like most of the Mexican food I have back in Chicago is like after the bar when it's like midnight and like those are the places that are open. And so like you're going in and you're getting, but like there are food trucks and food stands and stuff in Chicago, but not as much as LA. Like you can throw a stone and you hit a tent on the side of the road that is cooking up like the best birria you've ever had. Like it's just, it's so readily available here. And that's what I love about it. But I don't want people to sleep on Chicago when it comes to, I don't know, it's not necessarily tacos, but like anything really just in general, I want to give a huge shout out to Chicago Mexican food because it's really good.
I've had it and I agree. And I'm just like, I consider myself an authority, but no, I haven't, to tell you the truth. I've never had a bad meal in Chicago. So it's,
that's why we're 10 to 15 pounds heavier than the rest of the country. We're fine.
It's all good. It's all good. Oh, mi amiga. This is always such a blast. Okay, make sure after this if you haven't already read that Tevin Jenkins, seen that Tevin Jenkins Tevin Jenkins work on foxsports.com, make sure to go through it. Please, mi amiga, pump anything and everything you got coming up.
Well, I mean, we're just getting back in the swing of things, right? It's crazy how after 4th of July, everything just kind of ramps back up. So that's the first piece from the feature I did with Tevin, where I got to go to Arizona and train with him. So there's another piece coming next week, more about Tevin himself, what he's been doing over the past year to become a leader on that line, and the responsibility that he's taking individually on top of just some general commentary on offensive line play, because again, these guys don't get the credit that they deserve. So that's going to come out next week. And then, I mean, the NFL on Fox podcast is going to be starting back up in beginning of August, I believe, because they're on hiatus right now. And I'll be, appearing on there pretty regularly. I mean, I'll be at training camp for the Bears starting at the end of the month. It's just, there's a lot of stuff going on.
Love it.
for
Love it. I can't
July
wait.
11th.
Can't wait to see. And again, I'm beyond proud, beyond proud,
Thanks.
beyond proud of it, because I knew
Thanks,
you then.
Jorge.
You did everything, but you know that when that door got open, you just kicked it down and keep kicking it down. Yeah, keep kicking it down. Oh
Thank
man.
you.
So just closing up shop, make sure you're following us on YouTube, Familia FFB on YouTube. Hit that like, hit that subscribe. Keep getting that great content. We got more NFL Insiders coming up. And also use that underdog promo code Familia. When you do your initial deposit up to $250, you're going to get matched. So get in there. Those best ball drafts are caliente. You might even be drafting against me, because I've got probably about 10 drafts going, and I'm going to be doing 10. I'm probably going to do about 15 or 20 more. So let's go. Let's go. Once again, muchas gracias to our invitada, Carmen Vitali. You got always corazón for you. And familia, always remember that todos somos familia. Salud.